All right, B Block Podcast. Brandon Scott here, your host. Make sure that you are subscribed to the B Block Podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. You can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends about it. We talked to DJ Bien-Aime of ESPN. He had an article to come out over the weekend that basically dissected what went wrong with the Texans offense, particularly with offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik, what exactly led up to his firing, his predictability, his lack of adjustments throughout the season. This is now, you could look at it as water under the bridge if you like, but I do think it's important to follow the story of how we got here and then talk about how you and where you go from here. How you get there and where you go from here. And we did that with DJ Bien-Aime of ESPN, went over some of the things that were pertinent in the article, and also looked ahead at the Texans offseason and the job that Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, and namely offensive coordinator Nick Caley have in front of them in trying to turn this thing around, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. We also talked about some of the things that they might need on the defensive side, and with the combine coming up, what they might be looking to do with pick number 25. Really enjoyed this conversation and appreciate DJ for spending a little bit over an hour of his time with me. And I hope that y'all enjoy this as much as I did. I don't know if it's anything worse than getting blamed for something that you didn't do.
Yeah.
Or having something said attributed to you that you did not say.
Right.
Man, that's got to be like one of the worst feelings, one of the worst, because it's like you defending something that you shouldn't have to be defending.
Right. Right.
And I got to just say this, man, that was one of the more like unimpressive or least impressive things that I've seen the league do in a long time.
Yeah.
Is not do their own fact finding and erroneously attribute a quote to a player that they fined $25,000. It ain't my money, and I'm not in Joe Mixon pockets, but I'm glad that man got his money back.
Yeah, and they just show you like no matter how much money people got, 25 G's is still 25 G's.
Yeah,
and obviously we can see how much money he's made in the NFL, but clearly it don't matter how much money guys have made. 25 G's is still 25 G's. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of wild that like he got fined for something somebody else said, and it was in another article. So it was like you didn't watch any of the interview post game to see that he did not say anything like that, and then you read the article, and the article is obviously incorrect. I mean, it's a shame that the article didn't even put a editor's note. They just changed it, edited it, and kept it pushing. And then you find that guy for that. I'm glad he got it rescinded because he didn't really say anything crazy. He just say, you know how it is when you come up here, everybody can see it, but he didn't really specify anything else. I was more surprised when Anderson got his rescinded because he legit said, we knew it was going to be us versus the refs. I'm like, all right. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm glad Joe Mixon got his bread back for sure.
Yeah, if I had put it on, I thought Joe, what he said could have got him. I thought D'Amico did the best job of leaving like plausible deniability and not getting fined. I thought the most egregious went Will, then Joe, then D'Amico. But I thought with like with Will and Joe, I wonder if it's just a matter of the league just saying, hey, man, we did a bad job of this. We're gonna go ahead and get y'all money back and just kind of let it roll. But I did think it's interesting about like what you mentioned about the article. Yeah. Because, man, especially you and I both as like, writer background, I do wonder how much the league is going to be able to, like, going forward, rely on written journalism, print type of journalism, if you will, for lack of a better term. I know it's not print, but like the written word as something to cite when you have so much of video and audio and multimedia potential out there to verify whatever it is. Like, right. It used to be somebody like me or you would get a quote from a tape recorder and we would write it down and that would be the record. But now everybody's got their phone out. Everything is videoed. All the TV cameras have the same access that we do. So like it did make me wonder, like, is this a is this going to be kind of like a marking point of like, hey man, we're not going to be able to just rely on a written word to check somebody. We got first of all, we got to do our own fact finding, and then also the written word is not going to be enough. Like we got to check the written word with the multimedia, basically.
Right. I mean, at that point, you kind of, because in scrums, there's no transcript being emailed to anybody. It's really like whatever. You really got to rely on that person having integrity. I think at that point, they just kind of have to see who is actually there and who isn't. Like someone is aggregating and someone's actually reporting based off of being there. Because it's kind of wild that they went off of clearly a website that covers the Cincinnati Bengals. Because he was kind of like that site's kind of like the similar site that Cody Davis worked for, right? But in Houston, where he would just basically cover, the Rockets, cover the Texans for SI, for for basically just for SI, but on an off-kilter second level, third level type of publication. I mean, it's very similar to that, right? Because most of those SI guys don't travel for work; they just go to home games. So obviously, that guy wasn't there, and it was kind of interesting. It was like, did nobody realize? Wait a minute, that was that website. Nobody else there said that. You know what I'm saying? Because if Joe Mixon really said that, it would have been all over the internet.
Right? It would have been a main headline locally for the people that were there. To your point,
right. And so it's like nobody. You really thought that this particular website was the only one that got this information? You know what I'm saying? And again, it was very clear that TJ Houshmandzadeh said it, not Joe, because TJ tweeted it. So
now the league, it's funny. The league got a media literacy problem because they don't understand kind of how you just broke that down of how, you and I understand like conglomerate media and like places that should like share information based off of, hey, we're owned by the same company. Right. So like an ESPN in Miami might pick up something from Houston if it's relevant to Miami and vice versa. Same thing with, Odyssey where I work, or the Houston Chronicle, or any other place. Like if they got a sister station or some kind of connection, they'll use that. But to know the difference between that and on the ground reporting, like where is that likely to have actually come from? And to be able to draw those connections, they gotta meet. You would figure somebody that's in charge of looking that type of stuff up would have better media literacy and understanding of how these things work, how these dynamics actually work.
Especially if you're going to hand out a $25,000 fine.
Exactly. But I could not imagine if somebody, whatever the equivalent, because obviously $25,000, you can't find me $25,000 because what that means is I work for you now, like in a different kind of way. Like I owe you. You know what I'm saying? But whatever the equivalent is to us regular people, like if that's a $2,000 fine or whatever, like you better. Man, I could not imagine you gonna come at me and say that this is what it is based off of what somebody else said.
Right.
But what I wanted to get into, man, is it fixed? Is this gonna fix it? They hired a new offensive coordinator. The Texans did. And this is DJ Bien-Aime of ESPN, by the way. They hired a new offensive coordinator to replace the offensive line coach. Is that it? Is that we good now? Everything is easy peasy now. Or what? What you think?
Yeah, man, I think it's so interesting to me because I truly believe that NFL coaching, in terms of how we cover it, is probably the least understood thing that we discuss in all of sports. Because I genuinely think that, because there's so many things that aren't quantifiable, right, to actually pinpoint. Because with quarterbacks, it's really obviously it's still hard to evaluate quarterbacks, but there's checkpoints that you can go by, whether it's completion percentage, yards per attempt, overall passing yards, EPA per drop. But there's so much data points, right? That you can actually look at. Same with O-line play to an extent, from an analytical data standpoint, pressures, sacks, pressure in pure dropback situations, pressure in quick dropbacks. There's so many things that you can actually pinpoint to at least get a fabric of understanding towards what this person or this player brings to the table. With coaching, there's really like not much that we can actually tentatively grab. We're really just going off of hearsay and vibes. That's literally, it's really, that's all we really go off when it comes to coaching, which is why Nick Sirianni, his first press conference, people thought he was going to be an absolute joke, blah, 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 blah. Same with Dan Campbell. And then Nick Sirianni has one of the best records since becoming a head coach in Philly. Dan Campbell obviously turned things around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, like, we kind of lean and try to find the cliche. Like, I seen people on Texans Twitter getting excited because they were like, the OC said that he's not going to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Well, that's what most OCs say, right? It really comes down to like what happens when the bullets are flying. What do they actually do when adversity and trials and tribulation actually come? So to answer your question, does this fix all of it? I don't know, right? And I think nobody actually knows for real, no matter how much film you watch, because again, like, there's so when you watch like a play being designed, like happening on a field, right? Let's say it's CJ, ball for the Ram. Matt Stafford drops back, throws the ball here, completion, touchdown, crowd goes crazy. There's so much that happens behind the scenes that is not reported, that isn't broken down from whether if Matt just said, hey, Puka, I need you to just do this, blah, 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 right? But then like people gonna be like, oh my God, nice play by Sean McVay. But in reality, it might have been just been an audible or things of that nature. But now we're hiring a guy that's never called plays before. Well, we as in Houston, they're hiring a guy that's never called plays before. So no matter what film you put out there, no matter what film you watch, no matter what he says, there's nothing tangible to even hold on to because he's never ever been in a position to where he was even directly involved with the orchestration of an I guess a play, because he was a tight ends coach and then last year became a pass game coordinator. And I'm sure as a pass game coordinator, you have some involvement, but Sean McVay still calling plays, and you have Mike LaFleur, who's the offensive coordinator. So those two have way more involvement with what the plays are going to look like and things like that. Not saying he doesn't, but again, it's like there's so much that, and obviously I'm sure like he's drawing up things of that nature. Like he has an innate knowledge, but being a guy actually calling the plays and designing the plays, because those are two different things. Like you can design plays all day. I can go right now and I can design a play that looks nice. Being able to coach it, teach it, and then call at the right time in a game based off of what the other team was doing, based off of my prep on like their tendencies, there's just so much that we don't actually know in our preview to, that if anybody, whether negative or positive, when it's a guy that's never called plays before, negative or positive, if you're too negative, you have an agenda. If you're too positive, you have an agenda. For me, I'm just straight down the middle. That's why I'm like, we'll see. Like I would be I'd be a liar if I'm on here saying, oh, it's going to look like this or it's going to look like that. Because even though he was in New England for 6 years, it could be a lot more like what was like in LA. But even then, like, he was only there for 2 years. So, like, we really don't know. What is he actually going to lean on to make the fabric of his offense?
That's why I brought you on to bring logic to it. Because, of course, I traffic in the spaces of super fandom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot of, well, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you also want to make sure that you're having, some rational conversations about it. And
right.
I've always said this, even as, somebody that's like outwardly pro Houston and all of that. Right. That's kind of like my thing, my shtick. I'm still like, man, when it comes to coaches, like forget agendas for a second. When it comes to coaches, man, you are lying if you can say somebody that's never done whatever that job is going to be a success or a failure. Right. And you don't have to be in such a rush to have such a strong opinion on it to where you're speaking out of your depth and out of your element. It's not as necessary as you might think it is. And the reality of it is, whether we're talking about making the transition from coordinator to head coach or from position coach or some type of assistant level to coordinator,
right?
If they have not done the next job, you can be hopeful, you can be optimistic, you can be positive, you can root for a person, you can be skeptical. You can say, I don't know. You can have a feeling or an opinion, but to be definitive, like this is what it's gonna be, it's impossible. It's impossible to know. That's what makes it. That's what makes it such a mystery and such an intriguing proposition. Whether you're talking about right now with Nick Caley or 2 seasons ago with Bobby Slowik, or even with D'Amico Ryans himself, or even going back to Nick Caserio getting hired 4 years ago. Like, a dude stepping up a level is very, very difficult to predict exactly how that's going to go.
Absolutely. I mean, how many guys have been viewed as the hot shot, the next up and coming, and they completely flame out? Like Bobby, literally 365 days ago, was viewed as, in 365 days later, was going to be a head coach somewhere. People thought 2024 was going to be Bobby's last season in Houston, and it was. He just got fired. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could turn that fast. Just like Adam Gase was once viewed as a hot rising hot shot coordinator. On the defense side, Robert Saleh was viewed as a up and coming hot shot defense coordinator, could become a great head coach, and now he's out of it. Well, he's back with San Francisco, but point being, like, you really don't know. Like, the only people where you can actually like have some be a little definitive to an extent is like guys that have like a lengthy track record, right? Like, you can look at Pete Carroll and be like, all right, he should bring some level of stability to the Raiders because that's what he's done everywhere he's been for the most part, right? But like, if a guy, as you said, never done the job before, it's just virtually impossible to truly be definitive. And like, you can be definitive, but it should be a guess. No matter what you do, it's always going to be a guess. It's not going to be even an educated guess because it's a coin flip, right? It's like, he's going to be good or he's not. He's going to be bad or he's not. So like, when it comes to, and I learned that when it comes to coaching, like, you really got to like, let that play out. You know what I'm saying? Because it's one of the most underreported things in all of sports, because most guys don't know what exactly a coach does. One, because coaches keep things guarded by the vest, so they try not to let anything out for the most part. And then two, like, you know, just being honest, like, some, you know, especially on a national level, like a lot of those guys don't even understand. Like, if like some of the coaches went in depth in what they actually did, some of the guys wouldn't be able to tell whether that's unique or whether that's normal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember I had a homeboy who I went to JUCO with. He was like, man, JJ Redick gonna be a great head coach for the Lakers. I've been watching a lot of his podcasts with LeBron. A lot of stuff he's talking about, man. I'm like, bro, you didn't play basketball. You don't study basketball like that. So all that seems foreign. That's foreign information you're intaking, which means that it's all going to seem unique to you, which now is going to skew your perception towards thinking that, oh, this is so unique when they're just talking regular basketball. But you don't know the difference between regular basketball, even like as bad as like Lovey or David Culley were as coaches, right? With Houston, if they talked football with just the average person, they'd be blown away. Like, oh my God, this man knows so much. Just like how my homeboy was talking about JJ Redick, and obviously JJ's had success this year, but he was so blown away. But I'm like, yeah, because you don't have a basis of knowledge on this particular thing to the level to where you can difference, okay, what's unique and what's just what every other coach does. It's kind of like, why am I trying to go political, but why, like, people that if they don't study politics on either side, if they can be really susceptible to low quality information or be confused or moved by high quality information that has an agenda because they aren't themselves immersed in that culture or that you know, whatever. And it's so easy for them to be swayed either way. And the same thing with coaching. Like, I seen Texas fans being like, man, like, look at all the things that Nick is saying. I'm like, bro, if you go back to Bobby, his first year, he was saying a lot of similar stuff. And y'all wanted this man out of town by week 18 of 2024, you know? So to answer your question, man, the first question that got us on this tangent was, is this going to fix it all? Nah, because they still got to add some players.
Yeah, man. It is. I think it also is just fair to say that when it comes to coaching versus like media and how it's covered and like fans and how it's understood,
yeah,
the level of, or the gap, the depth, how far out of our depth we are in the verses there is probably as wide of a gap as anything. Because even in politics, like, you might even feel like you have a certain understanding of how the world works, or how you want your tax money used, or whatever it is.
Right.
But with this, it's like, okay, first of all, this, we playing in the toy department here. It really is just football. But then as far as that goes, it's like, okay, the depth between understanding it and not is really, really wide, right? Or the levels in which you might understand it. So let's tackle it from a different angle, though, because you had an article out on ESPN.com.
Yeah.
It was titled "Predictability, Lack of Adjustments Doom Bobby Slowik and the Texans." And before I ask you to tell us more about that, I want to start here with, just taking this from a different angle, like, right? Because you do talk to people, and you also are one of the reporters that studies film and at least understands the game,
right,
to a certain level. So
right.
from your vantage point, what do you think is the biggest problem facing Nick Caley going into this job as Texans offensive coordinator in his first season?
The biggest problem for sure is going to be coaching up the interior offensive line. No matter who it is, if you want to go with the young guys, I would say, like, let's say hypothetically, I don't think Kenyon Green is in the mix, but like Juice Scruggs, Jared Patterson, just like coaching them up so they can be better, to pick up stunts better, being able to effectively execute dual blocks, or blocks where you just double team moving up to the second level, being able to move laterally if you're going to do outside zone, move laterally while still climbing vertically, and being able to target correctly. Because so many of these little things, if it's not coached right, it looks like what the Texans offense on the blocking standpoint where it just looks discombobulated. So I would say that in terms of just getting their IQ a little bit higher, and also just getting some of their play strength a little bit stronger. And granted, like, Nick doesn't have much control over that, but that's more on them. They could improve in that aspect too. So I would say that. Also, based on what they have right now, man, they for sure got to get a couple more receivers, right? Because, like, we'll see about Diggs. Tank is probably not going to play this season. Like, the man had a catastrophic knee injury in late December, like week 16, no less. Like, it's expecting a guy of his size, his magnitude, his play style to be back by week 1 after injury like that. It's kind of foolish, in all honesty. So they got to kind of get guys for the future in that aspect. Because even, let's say Tank does come back towards the end of 2025, right? Next year, we're going into the last year of his deal, right? Obviously, he probably won't get an extension, anything like that. But you need cheap labor at receiver now, right? Because Nico's making a lot, Laramie's making a lot, CJ's making a lot. Well, we'll be making a lot. Will be making a lot. Derek will be making a lot. So now this is where you have to lean on cheap labor at vital and premium positions, right? They got that with Kamari at that position. Obviously, Will and Daniil are going to be pretty expensive here soon. But once they move on from Daniil down the line, you're going to need to obviously get cheap at that on that opposite side. So I think that's going to be the same thing at receiver, right? Like, Nico's making a lot. It was only a 3-year extension. So probably next offseason, Drew's probably going to go back to the table trying to ask for more, because Nico should have another pretty good year. So in reality, like, going into 2026 going to 2026, you're going to have Mechie. Mechie might be a free agent, possibly. I think I know a restricted contract or whatever that is. But I know Tank will be going his last year. Hutch will be going his second to last year. Like, guys are going to be at the end of their deal. So you're going to need cheap labor that can make plays effectively that won't cost much for the next 3 years, So I think receiver and getting the interior offensive line coached up better is probably like the two biggest things Nick Caley's going to figure out.
Yeah, I'm with you on the offensive line, man. Like, my different way of saying it would have just been, and I think you were real, specific, with the critique. But I would also just say, man, figuring out what that offense, like, whatever he ends up getting, because Caley's not gonna be putting the offensive line together, right? Like, Nick and D'Amico and scouting personnel, everybody's gonna power out and figure out what works.
Right.
Both from a scouting standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And then Nick Caley will deal with whatever he's there to cook with. But once he figures out what the ingredients are, I feel like it's a matter of really figuring out what those guys do well and what the identity of it is, as opposed to necessarily what he might want to do.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's what I have no idea how he's going to approach it, but I'm just saying what the importance is of, like, and he talked about this, honestly, like, whenever he spoke on it, like, hey, it's going to be player driven. What we do will be player driven, and I think it is important that he stay true to that. and really figure out like whatever is the cast of the offensive line, not trying to, as he said, square peg round hole it, like actually figure out what it is, what the identity of it is, and then go from there. Because like if your offensive line, no matter how much you pay them or how good you actually think they are, if you're not playing to their strengths and you're more so playing to their weaknesses, you're behind the 8 ball in terms of like what your offense can actually do from there, what kind of concepts you can actually run, what you can actually execute, because you can't block it. And it does not take like a football genius to understand that.
No, it does not.
So like to me, that's the basis of it, because the offensive line, and this is getting to I think some of the issues that were pertinent for the Texans offense. They didn't always necessarily feel like the whole offense in general didn't always necessarily feel great about what they were doing.
No.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it, is like finding that identity and sticking to it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree there. I think you hit it on the head. Finding the identity and sticking to it, whatever works best, sticking to that, and obviously having some counters off of that, because being able to counter is vital in this league. You got to be able to counter, because people are going to take away what you do well, right? Like that's what teams do, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not reinventing the wheel with that statement. You feel me? But again, like you're gonna have to find ways how to adapt once teams take things away, which obviously Bobby struggled with, unfortunately. Like that's something that we can objectively say he struggled with, was adjusting when teams, because last year, because I remember one of my homeboys, he actually he's a scout right now. He's in the scouting department for a team in the AFC South, and he was in the spot in the AFC East, and he knows I'm a Dolphins fan or whatever, but I know that I remember him telling me that the reason why Mike McDaniel had so much success early on that first season was because he never called plays before, so no one really had an idea on what exactly his foundation was. So teams are just kind of going in there. Not only we're guessing, but it's way more educationally guessing versus before, but versus later on, where like you have like an innate knowledge of what they actually want to do, right? Even though like 2023, they start off super hot, but they tailed off towards the end in 2023. And it's kind of similar to what I went with Bobby, right? I remember the first 5 games. You just look at the raw numbers in the first 5 games, like in 2024. CJ was still putting up numbers. Like he had 200-300-yard passing games. One against the Bills, one against the Jags. The Colts game, they put up like, I think he threw for like 240. Joe went for like they had over 400 yards of offense. So like there was some good things early on, but then like as the season progressed, and I think the Packers game is when everything kind of went off cliff, was that Packers game. And I think that once he was out of beat, he just couldn't adjust and find answers, because teams are going to try to take what you do. Is what are your answers to handle that? And I think sometimes he stuck too much to, well, we're going to just out execute them, and I think that's usually a red flag if like if the answer is out execute when teams are trying to, because again, like if we're both trying to walk down a hall and like you're literally, the wall's tight and you're literally, in my way, and you got both hands on the edges of the wall and you just are in the way. And I'm gonna just try to ram right through you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not efficient. You know what I'm saying? That's for me. It's just all right. I'm gonna just walk. Yeah, I'm gonna go further around, but I'm gonna walk somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? But at least at that point, like I had a counter, and that's very simplistic. But point being, I had my answer to you being in my way wasn't I'm gonna just go right through you. It was all right, I'm gonna go a different route, And I think too many times his mindset was I'm gonna just go right. We're going to out execute these guys, and I think like execution is very important. And there were plenty of times where the players did not execute the way they needed to. But it was also like for one example that like I knew that Bobby was calling plays, but not necessarily calling plays based on the flow of the game. Against the Jaguars, early on in the game, he called a fake screen to Stephon Diggs. It got like a first down, cool. He called it again later on in the game. You can't call a fake screen where you have Stephon Diggs running a slant twice in one game. Like that's more of a one-time play call, and that is that. You got to throw toss. Because again, like the team, they saw it. Are we going to adjust now? Why didn't he call it again? You know what I'm saying? So like, I think the idea that it's only just players just got to go out there and execute, that is always going to be problematic. You still need your coaches to be able to put you in position to where execution is easier.
Yeah, you mentioning that made me think about a play in Minnesota or a sequence where K Stover, they had K Stover block, and I know we kind of chatted about this before.
Yeah, we have.
Because like that what he had him doing is not like a foreign concept for that offense. Like as we talked about, like you and you do pretty much in any offense at some point gonna have your tight ends do something with the defensive ends. You cannot like wholly avoid that. Right. But my whole thing was, and I'm trying to remember it now, but I do know the second time that Stover was lined up against Jonathan Grenard was the sack.
Yes.
But that the first time it happened earlier in the game, and it wasn't, both of these were pretty early in the game.
Yes.
The first time it happened was like a cautionary tale.
Yes.
It was like a whoa. We might not want to do that because it didn't result in disaster, but the one-on-one rep of it was, we probably don't want to do this.
Right.
But then they did. And it resulted in the saying, I was like, okay, I know as far as concepts go, this is not a form, but this particular matchup is maybe not one that we want to go. Maybe we want to do something else. And look, I don't know what the something else is, honestly. Right. I just knew that it wasn't that at that point, you know. And that was like an early example, right? You know, you go further into the, further into the season, and you know, obviously you mentioned the Packers game, and it just seemed like eventually the frustration boiled over, and it was just something that, like, you know, I think it was in your article where it's like, man, we had all year, you know, we had all year to figure it out, and we didn't, you know, from the start of it to the finish of it, it got worse instead of getting better, basically.
Yeah. And I think it was kind of telling when somebody in the building was like, we had all years making adjustments and it never happened. Like that's a damning statement. You know what I mean? Like, we had all year to make adjustments and it never happened. Like, that's tough. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, because like, you know, I always thought it was a red flag anytime like we would mention the second half stuff, and like they would be kind of dismissive of it. Obviously, DeMeco's always gonna be dismissive of it because it's like he's not trying to pour no fire into the flames. But he did it, like, you know, Bobby was always just, you gotta execute. It's like, bro, like, you know, and the thing is too, like, a lot of the guys were like, bro, I don't know what's going on either. Like, I don't. The players didn't have answers too. They're like, bro, I remember talking to one guy, he was just like, man, I don't understand like why that's a problem for us. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the fact that, and it did always come back to like, we just don't execute. I mean, we don't make adjustments once teams adjust to us, which is obviously damning too. But it's just like, man, like, how did I end up in this spot where like it's as simple as, bro, we just didn't execute. You know what I'm saying? And like, I mean, we just didn't adjust. And for me, it's like, man, if y'all not gonna adjust consistently, if it's just we're gonna just out scheme y'all, we're gonna just outbeat y'all. Like, I don't know, man. I've always been anti like that thought process of like, because even like Andy Reid and like Kyle Shanahan, like they're big on like we're gonna just out. We got better players than you, but we want to also make it as easy for the players as possible. And it's funny, like we saw like the complete contrast of that on the opposite side of the defense, right? Where the defense, like DeMeco, he got studs all over the place, but they make their job a hell of a lot easy. You know what I'm saying? Like it's easier for them to make plays, you know? And I think that's why Bobby, you know, is going to have to take a long look in the mirror and figure out how can he grow from this past season and make sure that's never ever a thing again where like he just doesn't have ways and answers to like adapt.
You mentioned earlier about some of the issues with the offensive line, or at least what Nick Caley has in front of him with this job of coaching up the interior. So related to that, I wanted to ask you, like, how different do you expect the Texans offensive line to look in 2025? And if you do expect any differences, where do you feel like the changes would make most sense? I'll just tell you from my standpoint, I feel like Laramie at left tackle is pretty much the only lock. Yeah. Say like this is for sure this, and then everything else, man. At least if I'm basing it off of how the last year went, everything else is basically up in the air to me. You know, from guard to the other tackle. So, so what you think about that, man? Do you expect there to be a wide range of changes, or what do you think makes the most sense for the team?
Yeah, man. I think if you're not Larry, nobody's safe. In all honesty,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think nobody's safe, man. I think that because you basically can make the argument they need a whole entire new interior offensive line. The issue is, right, like Shaq, you won't save that much if you get rid of him from a cap standpoint. Obviously, you dumped a first round and second round pick into Juice and Kenyon Green. Obviously, the Kenyon Green experiment is pretty much done now. In all honesty, I think that they've kind of showed us what they think about him. Because when the man got healthy and was ready to come back, he never played again. That's a tell sign like, nah, we're good off him. Unfortunately, I think he has natural talent. I think that his confidence was shot. And I think that once confidence is shot, it's over with. I think that, and then the worst part too for young guys, right? I think the hardest part for recovering is like, they're human, right? Like if we're doing something for the first time, regardless of what we did before, we want to see success early, or at least at some point see some type of success. And he's never seen that for real, right? For like long stretches, right? If we start a new job as reporters or on radio, we want to at least have like a couple of months or at least a year or like 6 months of like really good work, really good, on air stuff, whatever that is. And then like transition to, when we have adversity, we can lean back on that. Kenyon Green he has none of that. Because the first year, obviously, it was,
it was bad.
In the second year, you missed the whole year, right? So in the third year, you get benched. So like, what does he have to lean on to try to, shake back? Like at least, because one example I can think of is Mekhi Becton who was with the Jets, now with the Eagles. Mekhi's first year, he had a high level of success where people thought he could be all pro going to year two. Then injuries and all that got in the way, and he's a guard, but he can always lean back on that. Kenyon Green can't lean back on that. So I think that's a wash. I think, Juice, my issue with Juice, he doesn't have enough strength to be a center, like to effectively be like a stalwart center. He doesn't have enough strength. He can't like move guys off of the line consistently, And I think that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Because if you want to do wide zone, like you're gonna have to be able to, be able to, if you're gonna block somebody and you're moving. The D tackles now are getting more athletic than they've ever been before, right? So and they're just as strong. So if you can't be able to reach block these guys and like be able to climb to the second level while still getting like be able to move that person, we might find somebody else in that right guard. Obviously, Shaq had his worst season of his career. That wasn't good for him at all. So I think, man, like the whole interior offensive line is up for grabs, and I think you can make the argument like maybe you put Titus at left guard, and then you only got to like maybe replace one of the guys from center to right guard, and then get Blake Fisher out there. But then it's like, all right, you can do that, but you did pay Titus to be your right guard, right tackle, and now you've kind of punted on that after basically a year and some change of experience. You know what I'm saying? So I think at least 2 spots will be brand new. I do believe that I do feel like Blake and Laramie probably the starting bookend tackles. Mainly because the staff, well, at least D'Amico and the staff has kind of showed us that like they'll put Titus at left guard and I think twice if they got to. And I think, once they drafted Blake in the second round, they kind of told you like Blake is the guy of the future. They drafted him in the second round. It's not like they drafted that man in third round or fifth round or something. He played in the second round. I mean, he's drafted in the second round. They played him pretty early, not early, but they played him pretty soon. They played him when they need to, like when they're like, yo, we got to figure out our best 5, and he was in their eyes one of the best 5.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I've been this fascinated by a Texans offensive line, at least in how it's going to be made up. Just for the simple fact that a couple of years ago they invested more money in the offensive line than anybody. And if I'm not mistaken, last year they were like second. They've consistently been, toward the top in terms of offensive line investment, but not
to add to that, they had spent the most money on offensive line extensions since the Eagles did, I think, in 2019.
Dude,
That's
So
2019 or 2017. It's one of the two. But that's how much they invested in the O-line from a money standpoint.
either one would be more than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So in the last 5 years plus, possibly the last 7-8 years, like you mentioned with the extensions,
Right.
I mean, that is a damning return on investment, I would say, and I think that's the big part that makes the offensive line and the offseason fascinating in terms of just how they approach that, how they go about that. It's funny, the Titus point that you bring up is interesting to me because I've thought about this a lot. Like, because I don't necessarily love Titus at guard. I'm not a huge fan of it. It worked out it looked better than I expected it to last year when they did it, when they went to it. And so I'll admit that and give them credit for that. But I do wonder if there were to become an understanding, and this is just me spitballing here on this part, but if there were to be an understanding of Titus at guard, and he trained that way and studied that way and really kind of dedicated at guard the way he had at tackle in the past, and it worked. Maybe it looked better than what it is when they just throw him out there or when he has to do it when somebody gets hurt.
That's a fair point.
Like if that's the move, to me, if that works and fixes what has been let's just be honest about it, a real desperate situation at that position. Right, for a while now, man. I mean, Kenyon's been in the league now. This is 3 seasons, and they drafted it at that position for a reason to begin with, right? So it's not like left guard has been, and I know it's year to year, nobody's thinking about, but just like kind of big picture thing, like they've been trying to figure that out for a minute. So if he is the answer, to me, even paying him right tackle money would make it worth it, since now your right tackle is a second round pick who you're not paying, and you know what I mean? Like, you just kind of, I don't want to say rob Peter to pay Paul, but like you just bag it up on the other end, basically.
And now, like, to be honest, like, bro, guards get paid 20, like Robert Hunt got 5 years, $100 million. Like, guards get $20 million per season, right? And that's a little bit less than what Titus was making. His cap hit is up there, but I don't think his actual
But it's usually the best was the Titus.
That's true though.
For him to be, work that at guard, he had to be a lot better than he is at guard.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just one of the things, man. But I mean, that's the big thing for me to monitor this offseason. It's not like I'm really be able to have no answers to it until they actually play a damn game.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm still gonna be curious about that. Like, in terms of like free agency, the trade market, the waiver market, the draft, all these things that you're going to be front and center for, obviously. I mean, I imagine you're going to do combine next week and all of that. Like, this is all of that. As we go through this process, I'm going to be kind of like thinking back, like, okay, they need weapons and they need protection. And
how they crazy though? Like a year ago, not a year ago, but almost a year ago, like we thought, man, their weaponry was insane. Now it's more like, they gotta get some weapons.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I was saying this, I think I said this on the radio. Like when they went and traded for Stephon Diggs, that was like a luxury item, because it didn't even really feel like they needed Stephon Diggs. It felt like they needed more, probably at the receiver position, but not necessarily like Stephon Diggs.
Right.
But they went and got him anyway. And I respected it. Like, I didn't necessarily think it was the smartest, most prudent move or necessarily nothing like that. But I can respect, like, saying, hey, you know what? We want to win the Super Bowl this year. We're going to go get a player. We're going to get a dude. You know what I mean? Like, kind of the hell with it. Like, we're just going to go do that. I can respect that. So, like, I wasn't, like, hating on them for it. But, fast forward a year later, 2 of the dudes that you thought was going to be dudes get hurt. One of them was really effectively on a 1-term or 1-year deal anyway, the way you structured the contract.
Right.
And now, you just got one dude,
literally you just have one guy.
It happens that quickly, man. It happens that quickly. So, like, man, they desperately need to do something at receiver, and they desperately need to figure out, I think I made this point not too long ago. Maybe I was talking to Sarge about this, but like, it feels like they're offensive line issues. You tell me what you think about this. It feels like their offensive line issues could more easily and readily be fixed with coaching and like what exactly it is that they're doing, as opposed to like the weapons issue feels like it 100% has to be addressed, like starting with personnel, like no matter what the coaching is.
Yeah, I 1000% agree with that. I feel like offensive line play, a lot of it is coaching more than it is, because so much of it is chemistry and everybody being on the same page than it is like, can you just block the guy in front of you? Because if we think about it, they actually were fine at block. Like if it was a standard 4-man rush, they were fine there. It was when teams threw them stunts, simulated pressures, got them off for just a quick second. That's when they started to like vomit on themselves to an extent. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately to say. But like that to me was the only time like I ever thought like, yeah, they don't know what they're doing. Like they, because if it was reversed, then I would think, okay, they need to get better players also, right? But for me, it's better players and a little bit of coaching. Where if it was, let's say they're getting beat on regular stuff, all right, they need better players. Then we can worry about the coaching later.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this, man, since you mentioned it, and we talked about the weapons. Stephon Diggs, you know, I'm guessing that that's not going to be a thing. But let me just ask you: does Diggs make sense for the Texans, and do the Texans make sense for Diggs from where you sit?
I think it depends on how much it is, because they don't get that much bread. So I think, man, like I'm not anti-bringing Diggs back. Like I'm really not. It's more like it has to make sense from a money standpoint, because they really don't have that much money now, right? Because they, you know, quiet as it's kept, you know, like that, you know, that's why like when people, I remember when once the season was going the way it was supposed to, once the season wasn't going exactly how people thought it would, and people were like kind of acting like this wasn't a Super Bowl roster or whatever. Like the expectation was a Super Bowl roster. So I was like, they spent money like they expected to be in the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't spend the money that they spent just trying to get to the second round, you know? So
No.
I do believe that they were trying to go get that last year. They were legitimately trying to bring the Super Bowl push. And that as a result, this year they don't have as much cash. So they're a little more cash strapped. Because, you know, when you go all in, you can go all in that 1 year. Like, you can do whatever you want. Next year is when you kind of pay the piper, because you got to pay everybody. You know, now you like your actual salary cap is paying these things. So if it's friendly, if it's not like too expensive, it's fine, because Diggs and CJ had a good rapport. But if it's a little, but I just can't imagine it being overly expensive. Like, who's gonna pay a bunch of cash for Stephon Diggs at this point in time? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's my whole thought. Like, you know, when it comes down to it, like, what is this market? I have no idea. You know, but like, what is the league saying? What does the league think about Stephon Diggs versus what the Texans think about Stephon Diggs, right, versus what Stephon Diggs thinks about himself? Because that part obviously matters as well when you're talking about somebody that's actually already rich, right? That's actually already made a lot of money,
right,
and can kind of dictate, is this worth it to me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you made a certain amount of bread, you can just say, well, you know what? My time is just worth more than $5 million a year or whatever. I'm just throwing a number out there, but you understand what I mean? Like, or $8 million.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, I've always said that once a guy has already been paid and he's like already rich, without like trying to be up in his portfolio, but like theoretically speaking, he's now at a point where like everybody I think gets to this point where they're like, okay, once I've made this much money, I'm never gonna work again for this much money. Like, right. It's just, you know what I mean? So like that, and now we're talking about that to a whole different type of level, like the money we're talking about. Right. So I just wonder how those things collide. Like I said, the league's view of him versus the Texans' view of him, and then sidebar, his own view of him, and how those things measure up. I mean, that's what it ultimately always comes down to anyway. But more so in a situation like this, when you're talking about a player who is as accomplished as Diggs is, but is now on, you know, what is widely considered and understood to be the downside of, you know, you're not getting younger, and then on, you know, his first time really being significantly injured, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and like another thing too is like, you know, we don't talk about it as much. We as like, you know, the media per se, but can we focus so much on running backs? 30 is
that is kind of the age where like receivers start to fall off that cliff. You know what I'm saying? We just don't talk. We just don't discuss it as much for whatever reason. We don't discuss it nearly as much as we should. But a 31, 32, 33-year-old receiver, because like the cliff happens fast. Like in a blink of an eye, Antonio Brown was no longer, granted, it's Antonio Brown, stuff on the field, whatever. But like people forget he was out the NFL by 33. You know what I'm saying? Like Julio, once he went to Tennessee, it was over. You know what I'm saying? And then once he got to Philly wearing number 80, I think he went Philly, then he went Tampa Bay, or he went Tampa Bay then Philly. It was one of the two. I think it was Tampa Bay then Philly. Yeah, it was Tampa Bay then Philly. But like he looked like a shell of himself. And again, he was only in his like 33, 34, 35. You know what I'm saying? Like Andre Johnson, same thing. It's just not as a polarizing of a topic. But once those guys get past 30, like even just watching Tyreek Hill this past season, he did not look frighteningly fast. I remember talking to Derek Stingley a little bit about it. He said like he thought going into that week that Waddle looked faster on film than Tyreek. You know what I'm saying? And like that's because Tyreek's older. You know, like receivers get old fast, way faster than we realize. So Stephon turning 32 this season, come off that type of injury. That's tough. My quote unquote benefit of doubt for him is that it was only a what's it called? It was a non-contact injury. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a non-contact injury. It wasn't like a devastating like you tear it, somebody dove into your knee, all that. Cause like Tank's situation.
Yeah. I was literally about to say that. It wasn't.
Yeah,
Tank's
situation I feel way worse about him, his ability to come back than I do about Diggs. Because like I feel like he'll be able to like he only has to worry about the ACL for the most part, and obviously some piece around. Tank has to worry about his entire knee, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think that's another just interesting thing. Like obviously, if it's not Diggs, then who? Because as we talked about already, like whether it's Diggs or somebody else, like this is interesting to me too. Like the urgency, and I guess kind of hitting on this a second ago, but like the urgency to make that move or to fill that position is even different than it was when you first traded for Diggs. And like to your point about
that's true.
Like falling off the cliff, like, to me is also why the structuring of the contract made the sense that it did to me. Like, like you can disagree with even, making the trade. Maybe you rather make that pick and invest in the young talent. And, like that's up for debate. But like once you do it, it makes sense to go ahead and just pay him all his money up front and just say, here's your money now. Give me your best year. Let's go win the Super Bowl. Because next year, I don't even know if you're still going to be good. No disrespect. But it's just the reality of, war of attrition, father time, however you want to characterize it. Like these are just the facts, how we know that it works. So yeah, man, that'll be fun to follow. I want to move on to the defense though and ask you about it because we kind of hit on it earlier, but I would say it is better than solid. What do you think? Like, yeah, definitely better than solid. They got foundational pieces at every level, and some players that have potential to be like perennial all pros. Obviously, Stingley got that nod this past season, but like, what do you think is the priority on that side of the ball this offseason for the Texans?
Yeah, I think that defense is borderline. I don't think it's elite yet. I think it's borderline elite because my issue with them is they don't travel as well. I don't think people have noticed that. Like they're elite at home, but they're like kind of above average on the road. Like, if you just look at this past season, if you look at their worst performances, it's away from NRG. The only game where like they didn't play well at home was against Titans.
Titans, yeah.
Yeah, but every other game, like they did enough to win. But on the road, like think about it, like on the road, Anthony Richardson had he had an okay game. Like when he came, he had his best game of the year against the Texans on the road. Or at least one of his best games. You talking about in the opener, the season opener? Yeah. Mac Jones had a good game against the Texans. Granted, he came off the bench, and that matters a lot when it comes to game planning and stuff, things like that, because you're kind of playing, left-handed. But again, like Aaron Rodgers had one of his better games. Aaron Rodgers, up until that point, that was the best game of the season for him up until that point. So let's kind of go on and on of like, even like the Chiefs, the regular season game,
they was able to put up some points that they weren't necessarily doing that throughout the regular season. Granted, they played a little bit better on the road in the playoffs, but still, you give over 23 points in the playoffs. Well, 23 points in the playoffs. It's hard to win if you're giving up 23 or more points in the playoffs. Like historically, it is much more difficult to win because once you get past that 23 mark, you're teetering towards shootout. And obviously, Texans have the offense to ever do shootout. So I would say like they're borderline elite. They just have to get better on the road. But as you said, they got foundational pieces, young pieces at every single important level. They probably just got to add a stud D tackle, like a D tackle that like you got a game plan for. If you don't game plan for, he could potentially wreck. Now everybody wants a guy like that, but that's all they're missing. Because linebacker, like they can get away with anybody at linebacker. No offense to Aziz or the other guys that they got. Because like the way the scheme is designed makes life easier on linebackers. And they just gotta be athletic and be just somewhat smart. And obviously Aziz is both of that. And obviously Henry To'oTo'o, which is why he looks so much better in year 2 than year 1. Because the scheme is built to help DBs and linebackers really play at their best because it's so much about just playing fast and doing your 1 or 2 things that the assignment asks you to do. So if they can get a stud D tackle, whoo! This defense could be like borderline. Like I don't think it'd be crazy to see this defense in a Legion of Boom type of sphere if they can add a stud D tackle. I don't think that's crazy at all, right? Like, I really don't think that at all because like you have your all-pro type of cornerback, you have a number 2 cornerback who could be a Pro Bowl level. You have a ball hawk safety. Now, granted, like he's not what Earl Thomas was in the run game, but he's for sure what Earl Thomas was in the pass game. Obviously, you don't have like your enforcer like Cam Chancellor, but the point being is like a dominant defense, right? Like the Broncos in 2015 when they won the Super Bowl, right? Like that or even Philly this past season, they obviously had a dominant defense. I think the Texans are right there, and all they're missing, what all those other teams had was like true difference makers at the defensive tackle position. And I think if they can get that, whether it's in the draft, we could be looking at a team that only allows like 15 points per game, 14 points per game, 13 points per game. And at that point, now you could truly think Super Bowl. If they can get the run game, they can get the pass protection fixed, and they can get the run game to be consistent, and that defense play like that, yeah, you could talk about the Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think that was the surprise of the season was, on the one hand, that the offense fell off the way that it did, but then on the other hand, that they were essentially able to be the same team in terms of production. I know, if you look at the ancillary numbers, that you can pick apart the differences, but essentially the same record and the same result at the end of the day,
right? Because
of what the defense was, right? Last year's offense with this defense, who knows? This year's defense with last year's offense, who knows? Like if there was a way, obviously you can't do this, but like if you could find a way to marry the 2 pieces of production into one actual year and like simulate the year, I would like to see what that looked like. Put one offense with the other defense and vice versa. Right. But so like that part of it is fascinating. I do think that that's the big thing is figuring out, like, and also like we saw what it looked like for this defense with the committee of defensive tackle. Like, like shout out to what they had, Mario Edwards and Foley and like all of those guys being really different but effective at their roles and like really like just really good in their roles and for what was expected of them. But you saw what it looked like with a rotation with just like, for lack of a better term, for role guys out there.
Right.
What if you did have like that guy? That's kind of, I think to your point is like what they're missing. And who's to say if they'll actually be able to get that? Like, you can identify what would be great to get. And, it's all also about like opportunity and what's available to you and all that kind of stuff. But that would definitely be, I think, something that would make this defense really something to basically be a force to be reckoned with. The only thing that's stopping it. All right, so let me ask you this, man. Combine, are you going? What's what's your?
I am not.
Oh, for real? Okay. Well, good for. Hey, I was gonna say good for you.
I like going to the combine though.
Man, you gonna get paid the same? Then they're not making you go?
Yeah, I will.
That's good. Hey, good for you. So all right. So you do go, right? I don't think I've been to the combine, man.
No,
So
I've been. I think the combine is super effective for a up and coming or a current reporter or whatever. Like, I think it's super effective.
Yeah. No, it would definitely I mean, all of the league wide events that are like relationship building, and like no matter what sport you cover, if there is an effective convention for your league, like in baseball, it's the winter meetings that happen right after the World Series. It's not combine stuff. You're not, but everybody's like around, and you get to kind of rub elbows and like meet people. Combine's even better because you get to do that, plus actually look at talent. Like they're not necessarily playing football, but they're doing things that are relevant to football in terms of athletically. So, yeah, that is one thing about like having not had a chance to. I've been to a lot of stuff, haven't had a chance to make it to that, but I wouldn't mind making that trip to Indianapolis at some point. Let me ask you though, what you think, at least in the spirit of the combine, what do you think the Texans are looking for at 25? And if it's easier to answer this, what do you think they should be looking for at 25? Is it something that we've already said? Because I feel like it might be.
Yeah, obviously, like I think they're for sure trying to get a stud D tackle, like a legitimate, like whether it's at the combine, whether it's at the draft or free agency. And that's something they for sure want to add because, as we just said, like that'll take the defense to the whole another level, like a completely different level. And that's and again, their defense is great right now. So like, imagine like if they could get that last piece. Now we're talking about like a crazy defense. You know what I'm saying? Like this defense could be frightening. You know what I'm saying? And we've seen what it looked like against, I don't want to use the word lesser talents, but we've seen what it looked like when they went against other teams. Good quarterbacks, and they was able to make their lives hell. Like they made Tua, Josh, Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson, and Justin Herbert all have the worst games of the entire season. You know what I'm saying? Like if you can do that to 5 guys and 4 of them former Pro Bowlers, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like their defense is so good, they sent Anthony Richardson to the bench.
Yeah, that did happen.
So I think that, man, like they get a stud defense tackle and obviously a receiver. I think they could draft interior offensive lineman later on, right? Because like a lot of stud interior offensive linemen don't even go like in the top, few rounds. Like most interior offensive linemen, like people either pay for it or they just get them in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round and develop those guys. That's one position you just gotta develop. Like you just need a good line coach. So we'll see what Cole Popovich can do. But yeah, I think they're in they're not a bad spot. I'll say that. Like they just kind of gotta like develop and hit on stuff.
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. From the because like I say, I'm of this place, and a lot of people close to me are similarly situated, care about this team a lot.
Yeah,
man, my people don't trust them drafting no offensive lineman high, man. So like to your point and even further beyond it, it's like, hey man, y'all already drafted that interior offensive lineman in the 1st round. Y'all tried that. We gave y'all a pick to do that a few years ago. And y'all did that, and it came from your Deshaun Watson trade, and you had your chance to do that. You traded back a couple picks, passed on players players that turned out to be really good, and you did that. Like, man, look,
they could have had Kyle Hamilton.
They could have had Kyle Hamilton. I'm pretty sure Jordan Davis was the one that was picked with the pick that they picked back from. And I know Jalen Carter's the guy there, but like Jordan Davis would be a good player for them right now. You know what I'm saying? I think he would be a good player for them right now. So, and he was picked in the spot that they traded back from. Yeah. So, like, if they had just stayed there, and just imagine staying there, drafting Jordan Davis, and then the left guard situation figures out itself. But yeah, no, man. I say all that to say, man, I got a lot of people that don't trust them to make that interior, almost like anything but a lineman, not because we don't need no lineman or because we don't want no lineman, but because we don't trust y'all to pick them. Because y'all done came out here, and this is all due respect to Kenya and Juice Scruggs, and I know they out there doing their best. But bro, you done went out there in the 1st, 2nd round these last few years and brought us back Kenya Green and Juice Scruggs, man. Go ahead and draft me a receiver, Draft me a defensive tackle. Draft me something else. You know what I'm saying? But not that, because we don't trust that evaluation. You know, and that's gonna be up to them to build that trust back up. You know, based off of how they draft and execute. Obviously, like, you know, it's gonna be that way until it looks better. You know,
right? Because I mean, the only guy they've ever drafted that it actually worked ish was Titus.
Yeah. Out of all those guys, yeah, Titus is the only one that's homegrown, and of course, like you think about Laramie and Titus, both of those are decisions that were made before. I mean, I understand that they both been extended since, right, but like they were acquired before any of the guys that are in charge now got there. You know,
yeah.
So I mean, they don't even have like that. That's their inherited talent. So, yeah. All right, man. Last thing about. I appreciate your time, man. We've been here for a whole hour. But I did want to, because look, man, I'm not that much older than you, but I'm just enough older than you where like.
You sure?
Yeah, man. I'm
almost 40, bro.
just that you said that shows how young you are. Cause you're like, you're almost 40, bro. And I'm like, yeah, I am. But that ain't that old. But your young ass is so young that actually it is.
So but like, hey, bro, I just crossed 30, bro. So like, I know I'm cracking jokes right now, but trust me, like,
yeah, you're only right behind me, man. It's coming. Hey, look, you talk about receivers. It's the truth for track stars too, buddy. Same thing, dog.
Unfortunately, the truth. But, you know.
Yeah. But I do respect and enjoy having conversations about, you know, the halftime show and really just music in general. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you felt about Kendrick Lamar's halftime show, and if you were like real passionate about it one way or the other. But I am curious who you think should headline the Super Bowl next year, the Super Bowl halftime show. Like if they for whatever reason was crazy enough to run this by DJ Bien-Aime and sincerely seek your opinion, what would you tell them to do?
Man, so to answer the first question, I don't be that passionate about like halftime shows. Like, for me, bro, like, I got so many other things I could do on my time than like really getting into like a full-fledged all-out debate about like a halftime show being good or not.
Yeah.
Because it's really 15 minutes, you know what I'm saying? Like, or 20 minutes, whatever. It's not that long. I enjoyed it, but like I know it's not for everybody. I know it's for sure not for people on the opposite side of the aisle, for sure. And that's okay. And you know, some people that are like Drake stans or whatever, they for sure found the thing. They probably found it whack. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I understand. But to answer your question about who they should headline, they could be funny and just headline Drake.
Yeah, the back-to-back. I got him on my list as just a.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why not? Like I know he'll put on a better show than Kendrick. Like, I'm way more of a Kendrick guy than I am Drake. Like I'm not. Like if I have in my whip, like I'm not. Unless it's like new Drake, but I'm not like playing like Drake songs off top. That's just not me. You know what I'm saying? Like there's other things I want to listen to than some Drake stuff. But you know,
yeah,
he is a better performer. You know, so if they want to go that route, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? You know, if they want to go the pop route, that's also cool. You know what I'm saying? If they want to maybe do some Taylor Swift or something, I don't know. You know, so you know, but me though, I don't really that jump 15 minutes, bro. 15, 20 minutes. Like even like when Beyonce came to Houston, like I wasn't even like that. Like obviously I was tuned in, but like I wasn't as tuned in as I thought I would be. You know what I'm saying? Like I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. You know, because granted it was all country music. I'm not a country music guy. So but to answer your question, I think, you know, now that I've talked myself into it, I would love to see Drake because, you know, I'm always a fan of Petty.
Yeah. So to me, that is kind of the art of it, though. Like the genius of it is how do you do a big show, a great show in 15 minutes? Mm-hmm. Because it's not a concert. You don't get to do like I just went the other night to the Mary J. Blige and Neo and Mario performed at Toyota Center the other night. Took my girl to that, and like they all did, you know. Like the only one, like Mario was the opener, you know, of course, as you would expect out of those three acts. and he did what would be effectively a halftime set because he's out there for like 15 minutes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, man, the challenge of that, of like really trying to do everything that you want to do and make it good and entertaining, but also like you're trying to do it for two different audiences because it's on TV and it's live. But which one are you playing to which one do you care about most? And clearly the TV audience is the one that matters the most because there's more people watching and there's people there. But you don't want it to be whacked to the people that's there because how they're responding kind of matters a little bit to the vibe of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like it's actually to me an interesting type of thing to try to navigate for an artist. So like I thought about this, like, you know, to me, I don't have to watch, you know, I'm the ultimate opt-in, opt-out person. Like I hate the people that are like, oh, the Super Bowl halftime show is whack. Oh, the All-Star game, we got to fix it. Like, bruh, you don't have to watch none of that. You don't have to like, or you can drop in for the parts that you like and drop out for the parts that you don't. You know what I'm saying? And just come in and out. Like, it's so much stuff that can consume our attention these days. We don't have to literally almost do nothing that we don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like, you know, 40 years ago, everybody had to sit in front of the TV and watch the Super Bowl commercials at halftime because that was the only thing you really had to do at that time.
Right. Now, like, you can be like, I'm gonna go just put on Netflix.
I got Netflix, I got HBO Max, I got Apple TV or Peacock or what. Like you got, and I just rattled off 4 or 5 of them, right? Like you got all of these different options. So to me, I hate that, but I do think that I got a couple ones. I wouldn't mind seeing Future. I think Future would be dope. I don't know. To me, two people that would be dope that I don't know if they would fit the brand are Future and Doja Cat. I feel like they could both put on great shows that would be entertaining, but also they might be, I don't know if they're like too raunchy of a brand for the halftime show, or if they got enough songs that will work for what I guess is effectively supposed to be a family show, especially after, you know, however many years ago with the, you know, the breast coming out with Janet Jackson and all that. They wanted all to be family friendly enough. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that, like I keep it simple. I'm gonna opt in if it's Future. I'm gonna opt out if it's Doja Cat.
I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. That is hey, look, you know what? I would expect that from you, DJ Bien-Aime. Yes. That is, and I respect that 100%, man. Hey, look, I appreciate your time. This is DJ Bien-Aime from ESPN. Keep up the great work, man. Much respect for what you're doing. And thank you, man. You have to do this. So, man, I appreciate you dropping by and spending your time with us, man.
Absolutely, bro. Anytime, bro.
Another big thanks to DJ Bien-Aime of ESPN for joining the B Block podcast. Gonna have to get that dude on a lot more. Real insightful, good information, good thoughts, good opinions on what's going on with the Texans right now. Make sure y'all are following DJ's work over at ESPN.com. Also find him on social media, man. He's always doing some pretty good work. We don't have a very large press corps in Houston in terms of Houston sports media, but the limited that we have is pretty solid, and I'm pretty proud of it, and I enjoy talking to DJ. I appreciate y'all for being here, man. Again, make sure that you subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend about the podcast, and until next time, y'all be good. From Hiram Clark, do it. Beast got from Hiram Clark, 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 Beast got from Hiram Clark.